Ancient Rome, established in 753 BCE, was a powerhouse bordering the Mediterranean Sea and the land surrounding it. The empire eventually grew so large it had to be divided into two sides, an east and a west. The plan was proposed by Emperor Diocletian in 284 CE. This attempt to save the empire failed, however, due to too many internal causes such as government corruption and outside invasion. The western part of the empire completely fell to barbaric invasions, and the eastern part of the empire became the Byzantine Empire, known as the New Rome. Socially, they had a large peasant class, needed for military, labor, and they paid the majority of the taxes, because the wealthy aristocrats managed to avoid and pay minimal taxes. But in exchange for farming labor, the aristocrats would let the peasants avoid tax collectors on their land. It was a patriarchal society. A woman's place was in the household, and they had limited social activity. The emperor was not a divine religious ruler, but was an absolute ruler and controlled everything having to do with politics. They followed Roman law code, and the capital was in Constantinople, named after Emperor Constantine. The invention of the plow was a huge advancement for farming. It made things easier and got jobs done faster. The countryside produced agricultural surplus, and the peasants farmed, raised cattle, and other farm animals. They used the seas for maritime trade, mainly the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean. The population decreased significantly in the 5th and 6th centuries because of disease spread through the Silk Road. Constantinople was a city full of entertainment. The Pope was the religious leader and head of the church, but was basically a puppet to the emperor. The emperor appointed the Pope, but because of this there were no conflicts between religion and government. Missionaries spread Christianity through the Silk Roads, and Constantinople was a very rich city. This wealth and power is reflected through the architectural wonder, the Hagia Sophia. Construction and agriculture were big boosts in the economy. Peasants paid most of the taxes and were mainly used for labor purposes. Like I said before, they traded through the seas and Silk Road, manufacturing textiles, glass, and jewelry. The Byzantine Empire lasted over 1,000 years, and it fell to the Ottoman Turks' conquest in 1453. The main Byzantine legacy that still lives on today is the Orthodox separation from the Catholic Church. Now here's crash course expert John Green to sum up some of the main concepts I just reviewed.
So remember when I said the Roman Empire survived till the 15th century? Well, that was the Eastern Roman Empire, commonly known as the Byzantine Empire, although not by the people who lived in it, who identified themselves as Romans. So while the Western Roman Empire descended into chaos, the eastern half of the empire had its capital in Byzantium, a city on the Bosphorus Strait that Constantine would later rename Constantinople, thereby paving the way for They Might Be Giants' only mainstream hit. Constantine moved his headquarters, and thereby the headquarters of the Roman Empire, to Constantinople in 324 CE. This, which with its soaring domes became a symbol for the wealth and opulence of his empire. The Romans were remarkable builders and engineers, and the Hagia Sophia is no exception. A dome its equal wouldn't be built for another 500 years. But you'd never mistake it for a Roman temple. It doesn't have the austerity or the emphasis on engineering that you see in, for instance, the Colosseum. And this building in many ways functions as a symbol for the ways in which the Eastern Roman Empire was both Roman and not. But the Byzantines followed a different form of Christianity, the branch we now call Eastern or sometimes Greek Orthodox. How there came to be a split between the Catholic and Orthodox traditions is complicated. You might even call it Byzantine. What matters for us are the differences between the churches, the main doctrinal one being about the dating of Easter, and the main political one being about who rules whom. Did I get my whom right there, Stan? Yes! In the West, there was a pope, and in the East, there was a patriarch. The pope is the head of the Roman Catholic Church. He sort of serves as God's regent on earth, and he doesn't answer to any secular ruler. And ever since the fall of Rome, there has been a lot of tension in Western Europe between popes and kings over who should have the real power. But in the Orthodox Church, they didn't have that problem because the patriarch was always appointed by the emperor. So it was pretty clear who had control over the church, so much that they even had a word for it, Caesaropapism, Caesar over Pope. But the fact that in Rome there was no emperor after 476 meant there was no one to challenge the Pope, which would profoundly shape European history over the next, 1,200 years. So I would argue that in some important ways, the Roman Empire survived for 1,000 years after it left Rome, but in some ways, it still survives today. It survives in our imagination when we think of this as East and this as West. It survives in football rivalries that have their roots in religious conflicts, and it survives in the Justinian Law Code, which continues to be the basis for much of civil law in Europe. Next.